Hello and welcome back to the final part of the Andorran Billionaire experiment. This time we've gone all the way to 2071. It's the furthest we've ever gone in an experiment. It's taken quite a while to get here. Hopefully we'll see some big improvements as we come along though. But first of all, as we can see, looking at the Andorran national side, first of all, world ranking 82nd. They've dropped down since last time we were here. If we look on the actual world rankings and their past world rankings, they were 83rd back in 2061, rose to a height of 75th, and actually the height of 68th that they've been at recently is the highest they've been for a long time. So they've not done too much recently. Clearly they've not been fantastic. If we look through their fixtures, they're beating some teams that are around their level. Bulgaria, Slovenia and Northern Ireland, they're beating them that year. That was pretty good. Unfortunately, I don't think they've actually qualified for a major tournament or anything like that. As we look through all these fixtures, they get some decent results against some sides, teams that they should be beating. They're beating the teams they probably should be beating this year. Almost an unbeaten year, doing very well in European leagues. Actually, the European league system, they seem to bounce a bit between Division 3 and or Division C rather, and Division D. They bounce between those two a little bit. They can't get out of Division C into the Bs, obviously, and the World Cup qualifying is very different as well. They don't do very well in that particularly, but it's good to see them doing pretty well in these European League divisions, for example. That's a good thing to see. It's good to see them finally getting wins. This year, 2062 was an unbeaten year for them, so that's fantastic, winning every game in the Division D. World Cup qualifying, again, they're beating the teams that they should be beating, but can't beat the teams that are better than them. If we look at the national side then, look at the best player at the moment, it's Jonathan Rodriguez from Sevilla B, a goalkeeper, 123 current ability, 170 potential, good potential there. Obviously no one coming through at the moment who's as good as that guy in the last episode. He was absolutely insane, became one of the best players in the world, scored bags of goals for Andorra and bags of goals in various European competitions for European giants. No one quite at that standard. There's a few players over 100 current ability. Look at potential ability, there's a few guys there with over 100 potential, but no one massively great. If we look at the under-23s, for example, Isaac Felipe, 132 potential, is kind of the best guy there. Under-19 squad as well, 99 potential is the best there. So no one coming through who looks amazing, unfortunately, for the Andorrans. Obviously, that 170 potential guy is probably the best, and hopefully he'll reach that one day. But I don't think Andorra are going to be winning the World Cup anytime soon. Right, a quick look at the Andorran First Division then, and as you can see, it's risen to 11th in the European rankings. That must mean there's been some pretty good European performances being put in by the Andorran side to reach 11th, which is fantastic, above the Greek, Danish and Polish divisions, just behind Belgium. Nearly breaking into that top 10, couldn't quite do it. But if we look at the past winners, in recent years, it's been absolutely dominated by Rangers FC. Lusitan's winning it in 67-68, but they've always come second. Santa Coloma and St Julius swapping third place and fourth place, respectively, as well. But obviously, a lot has changed. When we first started, Lusitans were the team to beat. They were fantastic until they hit some financial issues, and then they haven't been able to win the league for a long time. Rangers FC came and filled that gap and have won it for an awful long time in recent years as well. Winning it this season, winning it last season, and the season before that as well. And Lusitans demoted to second best team in Andorra. The last season we did then was the 2054-55 season. So after that, we'll have to have a look now and see what's happened. So not a huge amount of money being spent. Rangers actually selling players rather than buying in players. The biggest transfers that season were players leaving. I think that could be a theme, to be fair, looking over these next few seasons. Again, look at this, a few players leaving, mainly from Rangers for a lot of money. Season afterwards, though, a lot of players being brought in. 1.5 million is the best player being brought in, or the highest paid transfer rather. Santa Coloma spending a bit of cash in the 58-59 season. Las Palmas buying a player from Rangers for 1.1 million, the biggest in the 59-60 season. As we keep going forward, a lot of players leaving, not a lot of players coming in, which is a bit of a worry. They're starting to become selling clubs perhaps, and it will make sense in a minute, because around the 2065 mark I did check and see what was going on, and as I see, nothing much going on here. So we put some more money into the clubs to try and get them a bit more going on, things like that. So as you can see here, Rangers spending £6 million on a player there instead. So that's kind of a bit of an influence of the money I put in around this time, actually, the experiments. Although saying that, next season, only 1.8 million being the biggest transfer being spent, so perhaps they're not spending it massively as we look forward now. 2.8 million there being spent by Estudiantes for a player from Rangers FC. I don't know if this money's gone that I've been spending on them. A lot of Rangers once again selling players for a lot of money there. 10.5 million is the biggest transfer I think we've seen in the whole experiment, actually, perhaps. Eric Yeo leaving for Dortmund there. 69-67 season, Rangers suddenly decided to spend a lot of money. I guess they've got some money. They've decided to use the money that I gave them. 25.5 million rises to 29 million is the biggest transfer being spent there on Richard Berkhoff, who looks Looks very tasty, actually. Looks very, very good. He's got some decent pace and things like that. Crossing in corners, very, very good for a left winger. So I'm excited to see what he's been doing recently. For 25 million, that's probably quite a good deal, actually. And then the season we've just had, Jesus Christ, they have really gone out the door and spent a lot of money. 43 million on this player from Paris, rising to 49 million. Is he actually any good, though? That's the thing. He's a Greek striker. And actually, he looks pretty decent, to be fair. 18 dribbling, 15 finishing, 16 free kicks. Physicals are they're pretty good, to be fair. I'm 24 years old. He's not going to improve too much in the future, but that looks pretty good to me, I think. Right, thinking of Rangers then, let's have a look at their schedule and see what they've done. Right, back to the 55-56 season then. They've got all the way through to the group stages of the Euro Cup, lost in the second qualifying round of the Champions League. And well, you'd argue that's a winnable group, actually. Club Brugge, Napoli and FK Austria Wien. They beat Austria, they beat Bruges, drew with Austria once again, but lost the other games, unfortunately. So obviously that put them in the bottom half of the group. There's a lot of years to go through, actually, so we'll try and get through this relatively quickly. Season afterwards, they got to the group stages once again. A much more difficult group there of Tottenham, Fiorentina and Red Star. Obviously couldn't get through that. Once again, reaching the group stages of the Euro Cup in the season afterwards, but lose every single game there, which is a bit disappointing, actually, for Rangers. But at least they're consistently getting the group stages this time. Season afterwards, once again, they're in there, and they only lose the one game, win 2 and draw 3. They must have finished third just very, very narrowly there to not get through into the qualifying, into the knockout stages, rather. 59-60 season, though, they do seem to get a lot further. They're in that Group K. They lose 2 games, win 3 and draw 1, which puts them into the knockout stages. They beat Copenhagen, they then beat Malmo, but lose to AC Milan in the quarter-finals of the Europa League. That's the furthest we've seen any side get. That is fantastic from Rangers. I'm really excited by that. Hopefully that means there's going to be more improvement in the future. Maybe they'll win it one day, I don't know. Season afterwards, though, they go backwards slightly. They get into the group stages once again, but don't go any further than that, unfortunately. 61-62, get to the knockout stages once again after a very, very successful Group J campaign, not losing a single game there. They beat Copenhagen again in the knockout stages, but this time lose to SK Rapid Wien in the second knockout round. 62-63, but once again in Group L, it's fantastic that they're getting there every single season now. They're getting there into the group stages every time now, which is fantastic. We love that. That's really shown some good consistency, and it must be a real boost for the side. But unfortunately, that season they didn't get through. Season afterwards, though, they finally get to the Champions League group stage. This is the first time I've seen, at least, any side get to the Champions League. They kind of a decent run, to be fair. A draw against Man City and a draw against Dortmund looked pretty promising, but then they lost the rest of the games and obviously dumped them out. Must have put them bottom of the group as well, because they didn't go into the Europa League afterwards. 64-65, back in the Euro Cup group stages, lose to Arsenal but win the other games and draw some others, which puts them second in the group, I'd imagine, but they lose to Zenit 2-0 on aggregate in the Euro Cup first knockout round. 65 season, they get to the Champions League group stages once again, but lose every single game into Atletico Madrid and Monaco, being much too strong. And to be fair, they probably beat them quite deservedly. 66-67 season, once again in the Euro Cup Group J. This time they come up against Liverpool, Partizan, Stade Rennais, and they lose 3 games, but win 3, but somehow manage to qualify, probably in second place. Beat Valencia on penalties, beat Feyenoord 4-2 on aggregate, but then lose to Roma in the quarterfinals 4-1 on aggregate. Very close to getting to the semi-finals, and again in the quarterfinals, which is fantastic. The 67-68 season, once again in the group stages and get through it once again, past probably a relatively easy group actually of Zenit, Red Star and Sion. They beat RZ in the first knockout round, but come up against Seville in the second knockout round and lose 3-0 on aggregate, despite drawing one of those games, which is pretty decent for them. 68-69 season, once again, they've got it every single season, which is fantastic in the group stages. They've got to a group stage every season. They get through it, but once again lose to Roma in the knockout stages, this time 4-2 on aggregate. 69-70 season in the Champions League group stages once again, come against Porto, Lyon and Man City, and despite beating Porto and drawing against Lyon, they do lose the other games, so unfortunately they didn't qualify for the later stage of the Champions League or go into the Euro Cup knockout stages. And then in the season we have just had, bloody hell, they do pretty well. They get in the Champions League once again, beat Porto, beat Man City, but draw with Porto as well, but lose the other games, which must have put them third in the group as they qualified for the Euro Cup first knockout round, beating Ajax, then beating FC Salzburg, then beating Seville, but lose to Arsenal in the semi-finals. How agonising is that? 1 win away from getting in to the final. That's the furthest we've seen a team go. That is fantastic. I wasn't even expecting that. I didn't think anyone was going to win it. But clearly, in the season we've just had, they've done phenomenally well after all those players they just bought with the money that I gave them a couple years before. So, fair play to Rangers. That is fantastic performance from you. Semi-finals of the Europa League. It's taken you a long time. It's now 2071, but a fantastic performance. Right, we'll quickly go through Lusitans then as well. I don't think they're going to have done as well. I think Rangers are the team that will have done best. We'll skip through it quickly though. We'll only sort of dwell on the years they've done pretty well. So the 56-57 season, get into the Euro Cup group stages but lose every single game there, unfortunately. Next season they're only in the qualifying rounds, and I think the next few seasons as we look through here, they're still only in the qualifying rounds. They get to the group stages though in the 63-64 season, have a better campaign this season, but unfortunately don't finish in the top two to qualify any further. Season afterwards, again, very similar story. Lose every game apart from one, they don't qualify. 65-66 season though, back in just in the qualifying stages, constantly always in that fourth qualifying stage and can never break through. That's been a theme for Lusitans. But the 67-68 season though, they get into the group stages again, but only win the one game, draw two, and obviously finish outside that top two for qualification. 68-69 season though, Champions League. Absolutely incredible. They won the league, they must have been the year before, because they did win it once, didn't they? So that obviously qualified them for the Champions League. They get through to the group stages though, which is fantastic. They lose every single game, which, you know, obviously was going to happen, but they get through to the group stages, which is fantastic. So I guess a bit of money that we put in towards the mid-2060s did help boost these teams a little bit as well. Season afterwards, once again in the Euro Cup stages, but unfortunately, despite beating Tottenham and Partizan and drawing to Heerenveen, they lose the other games and don't qualify. And then the season we've just had once again in the Euro Cup, but lose out in the group stages. So a good performance from Lusitans actually towards the end of this experiment. Actually, they finish on a strong high note actually, so they can be proud of what they've achieved. Obviously they were a dominant team for a long time, but couldn't make that dominance last, and they couldn't turn it into a European victory either. So good stuff from Lusitans. I'm impressed with what I've seen from them. Right, I look at Santa Coloma now, and I think in a similar vein, they're not going to get out of the qualification stages for a long time. So we'll only dwell on the things that are really important, like them getting into the group stages. Some seasons they're not even in it, which is quite incredible actually, but you know, they've not got past the third or fourth group stages yet. They're still not in any sort of knockout stage or finally 68-70 season they go straight into the group stages actually, so they must have done something decent to get straight into the group stages. Unfortunately though, they lose 4 games, draw with Newcastle and Dinamo Kiev, but of course that wouldn't be good enough to progress into the later stages of the competition. And then the season we just had once again out in that fourth qualifying round, which they seem to have reached quite a lot of the time. The final team we'll look at then is St Julia, because it's those sort of 4 teams that always finish in the top 4 and always get the European places. The other teams don't really seem to do anything, and if they even did get in there, I don't think they do much at all. So St Julia is the last team we'll look at, but again, I don't think they're going to get any sort of group stage action here. As we skip forward here, you can see it's always just the qualifying rounds, and not even the fourth qualifying round. They're losing the earlier qualifying round, so they're not really doing anything. They can't seem to break through, and in the past few seasons they've not been there at all. So they've not been there. So actually maybe we'll look at other teams as well. Let's have a look at the past winners in the past few seasons. If we go back, that's the second division for some reason. I want the first division. So Genlai and Principat have been there in perhaps recent seasons actually. So we'll look at Genlai as well, and we'll have a little look at Principat as well. If we get rid of all these things and we go down to just the Euro Cup, if we go back to that 55-56 season, I don't think they're going to be in it for quite a while actually. I don't think they get into it until like the late 60s. They lose in the third qualifying round in the 61-62 season. That's their first appearance for a while. Lose again in that second qualifying round, and they keep doing it, to be fair. They get to the third qualifying round in 65-66. 66-67 lose to Dinamo in that third qualifying round. They actually get in further and further actually as the years go on. 67-68 just missing out on the group stages in that last game of the European qualification, losing to Partizan there 2-1 on aggregate. 68-69 season fall at the same hurdle against Lech. And then they actually do get into the group stages in the 69-70 season, so I was a bit early saying they wouldn't do anything. They get into Group F, beat Lille, beat Zenit, but lose the other games unfortunately, so don't progress into the knockout stages. And then the season we just had, lose unfortunately 2-1 to SK Rapid Wien in the Euro Cup fourth qualifying round. That's much better than I thought actually. We'll have a look at Principat as well, because they're a team that have been up there as well, but this is the last team that we'll look at. Nothing in there, and I don't think they're going to be anything until the late 60s again. I think the late 60s is when these two teams have had a bit of a resurgence and do pretty well for themselves. In fact, it's only until the 66-67 season that Principat come in. They win the first qualifying round, but lose in the second one to Hajduk Split. Not anything in the 67-68, 68-69, nothing again. 69-70 season, in it once again, but lose to FC Red Bull Salzburg. And then the season we've just had, they've gone absolutely mental. They won 2 games, drew 1, lost the rest, but somehow that was enough to put them into the knockout stage, and they lose spectacularly to Copenhagen. But that is fantastic from Principat to get into that first qualifying round. That is actually, I reckon, the most impressive thing that I've seen. Despite Rangers getting to semi-finals of the Europa League, I reckon Principat getting to the first knockout round, despite only winning 2 games in the group stages, is absolutely incredible. So fair play to them. That's thoroughly deserved. Right, we'll have a look then quickly at the Andorran Second Division before we finish. And we came in from here last time, so this, from Urgent upwards, this is where we're looking at. And as you can see, it's the same sort of teams that are winning it. So all these same teams just bouncing up and down between the 2 divisions. Can't establish himself as a First Division side, but are too good for the Second Division. Just keep bouncing up and down constantly. UE Santa Coloma and Urgendy literally swapping places every single season, just about. Athletic Escaldes getting in there sometimes. Past de la Casa finishing second a few times. Where are they at the moment? They're in the Andorran Second Division. As you can see there, they bounced quite a bit in the late 2050s, early 2060s. Interesting that their stadium is actually really small, 814 capacity. Is that a new stadium? That is a new stadium, built in 2026. We'll have a quick look at stadiums then as well, because that'll be quite interesting. If we look at stadiums, we're looking at names like Pas de la Casa Stadium, because that sort of suggests that it's a new stadium. Like the Campo de la Borda Matillo isn't going to be a built stadium, because it's named after, because when a football manager makes new stadiums, they usually name them after the team. So Inter Descaldes Stadium is probably a new stadium as well, if we click on that because of the name. Built in 2020, for example. Yes, that's a new stadium for them. If we look in the First Division as well, anyone else building new stadiums? Lusitans built a 21,000-seater stadium. When did they build that? Jesus, they built it very, very recently. Obviously, they must have had a huge following to build a 21,000-seater stadium. That is absolutely crazy, for example. I mean, I kind of want to know what they're kind of getting in that. If we look at Lusitans and we look at their schedule, for example, in their home games there, they're getting 20,000, to be fair. Home game against Braga, 19,000. Home game against AEK, 15,000. To be fair, they're getting the supporters in the gate, so 21,000 is probably warranted. Rangers with a 14,000-seater stadium as well. When was that built? 2051, slightly older, of course, as well. 15,000 is impressive. Athletic Escaldes getting 11,900 as well, built in 2069. Literally just been built, actually. Obviously, Lusitans and Escaldes using the money we've just given them very, very recently. Genlai built a stadium recently, 2059, much further back as well. Urgendy built an 8,000-seater as well, 2067, so that built very, very recently as well. Anyone else building them? Principat still using the Stadium National, which has been used for most teams, actually. I think Santa Coloma, have they moved stadiums as well? They've not moved stadiums, but they use a 5,000 capacity stadium. And have Ordino moved stadiums? No, they've not moved stadiums either. But some decent stadiums being built there. Lusitans 21,000. That is crazy. Right then, that is it for today's episode. Thank you very much for watching. And of course, that is it for the whole Andorran experiment. So get commenting down below what you thought was the best bit of the whole experiment, and leave suggestions for what countries you want to see me do next in the experiment. Thank you very much for watching today's video. If you've liked it, make sure you do drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, and I'll see you next time for some more billionaire action.